everybody. We're standing today. I thought I would maybe be able to think better if I stood up for once. I hope you are all having a fantastic day. Today, we are standing in front of my multitudes of stuff. This is the best corner in the room to catch the most stuff in. I wanted to go ahead and make a video about overconsumption. Specifically, I wanted to react to a video, and then I realized that the video that I wanted to react to is no longer the video I would like to react to. So I have now blindly picked a video for us to listen to together and go ahead and give my two thoughts. Now, it does seem that this is a doll collector. I actually did used to collect dolls back in ye day. Figures are what I do, and Girls and Panzer is the main kind of figures that I collect, hence the overabundance of that series. Anyways, this is a topic that I wanted to talk about. I am very much into talking about different important things within collecting, as well as the fun stuff and showing off what I've got and doing the other nonsense that I enjoy posting on here. Let's go ahead and see what they have to say and see if we agree or disagree. And you probably just listened to me ramble for a long time, because that's my specialty. This video is called "We Need to Talk About Overconsumption in the Collecting Community." I like the thumbnail said, "Or do we?" Like, we need to talk about this. Or do we? Thumbnail making 101. Always ask a question, so that way people have to click on your video to get it answered. Fair warning too, I just want to make sure I'm putting this out there. I am going to cut up his video to specifically be the points that I want to talk about. There's no point in you guys sitting here. If you want to see his whole video, go check him out. You don't need to watch it here, go check him out. But if you just want to hear the points that I have points on, then stick around.
I will be approaching this topic from the perspective of a doll collector, specifically fashion dolls, because that's what I do, and I can't really speak for any other communities, but I do think a lot of what I talk about here can be applicable to a lot of other hobbies where collecting is involved.
And that's exactly why I want to go ahead and put my 2 cents in, because even though I'm no longer a doll collector, I would not consider myself that, I am a figure collector. And I think it's interesting when people have different collections, because even though we may not understand that one thing that person's obsessed with collecting, we understand what collecting is, and so we can appreciate each other's collections. And I'm sure that there are plenty of other kind of collectors who are going to have the same exact sort of things to discuss.
In fact, I know it can, because I see the same exact discussion happening with friends who collect things other than dolls. And actually what made me want to make this video was a post that wasn't even about fashion dolls. This tweet in question, if I remember correctly, was a screenshot of a TikTok that had this bookshelf full of Sylvanian families, or calico critters, depending on where you live. Tons and tons of individual figures, families, you could say. A very impressive collection. And the caption was something along the lines of, "I understand collecting, but I don't understand needing more than one of each figure. That seems wasteful and like hoarding to me."
Ooh, what an interesting perspective. I say as I have multiple of a few figures. And I do have multiple of the same dolls, actually. Since he's a doll collector, I might as well bring that up. Is it like hoarding if you have more than one of the same thing? That's difficult. Is it obsessive? Yes. Is it odd? Yes. But I do understand, like, I can understand someone wanting to keep one in box and one out of the box. I can understand if a fashion doll comes with 2 outfits, wanting to have 2, one to put in the one outfit and one to display in the other outfit. But do you need 2 of the same figure? See, even for me, the ones that I have duplicates of, I'm painting or doing something to the other one and then keeping the original. That is a very interesting thought. I will say in that specific aspect, all those critters look the same to me. I have multiple of the same kits of tanks to build, and that I will say is so that I can see how my skills progress over time. But again, that's kind of also delving into a whole different hobby, so we're not going to go too into that. An interesting thought. That's an interesting tweet, and I don't see why anyone would have an issue, but I don't know, I was never on Twitter. Maybe it's a very hostile place.
Because if you don't know, Sylvanian families, a lot of the characters use the exact same sculpts. So there could be 2 rabbits or 2 foxes that look identical but are actually a mom and a dad, or a brother and a sister, etc. And to an outsider, they might look like 2 or 3 or 4 of the same exact toy. And this is a discussion that comes up every once in a while with doll collectors too. Are collectors who buy multiples of the same doll being wasteful?
I don't feel like it's wasteful as long as you have a purpose for it. Like, okay, actually, perfect thing. If you are part of the Girls with Panzer community, you probably know about the one house or guest home, I believe it is, that is just filled with Mikas. That is something that Darth had showed me pictures of. It is amazing. And I mean, I guess if you have like a whole ton of just the one thing over and over and over again, it is kind of intriguing on its own. It does make it more difficult for everyone else to find that. It's very hard to find the giant Mika Nezaberry, I believe they're called. But that's so cool that that specific place has so many of them. Is it odd? Is it a way a lot of people collect? I don't think so, but I don't think it's wasteful. It kind of sucks again that the rest of the fans can't have it, but at the same time I can appreciate their collection because they have something and I can just I don't need to own it because that collection's so cool. For the record, the way that actually came to be was that a lot of people donated theirs to that place just to grow the collection. So the collection has become even more, a very interesting, specific example. I can also think of, like, for instance, the Miraculous Ladybug dolls. I don't actually have any. My daughters have 2. There are multiple Ladybug dolls that look the same. Hell, even talk about Winx Club, which were dolls I collected. You had the normal version and the Charmix version, and they pretty much were the same costume, a little bit different fabric. You got them from a different seller that happened to have them from a different country. Sometimes there are also just little differences. Do you need a duplicate of that? Let's talk about trading cards. Do you need duplicates of the same trading cards? Like, this is a very interesting discussion to have, and I don't think there's any right or wrong way to collect as long as you are collecting and not just buying.
Are they contributing to overconsumption? And the conclusion that I always come to is no. And I also think we would all benefit from minding our own business. So personally, when it comes to collecting dolls, I am not a completionist. I rarely ever complete a set of dolls, much less buy multiples of one doll. It's just not something I do. In a line, there will be 2 or 3 dolls that I like and I want, and I'll prioritize those, and that's enough for me. For me, buying every doll in the set is unsustainable, both in a financial sense and in an emotional sense. It would be exhausting and draining for me to continuously hunt down specific dolls that I don't feel very strongly about just for the sake of completion. It's a common sentiment that my style of collecting is more noble, more viable, more acceptable in some circles. But notice how I keep saying, for me, personally, because that's actually not something I want to imply. If someone is a completionist and they find fulfillment in completing lines and it's something that is financially and emotionally feasible for them, then 1, that is simply none of my business, and 2, I have no room to judge, because at the end of the day, we're both going out of our way to buy these little plastic women, and who am I to say that there is a correct way to buy little plastic women?
Absolutely true. We all collect in our own way, and at the end of the day, we're all a little weird, because because this is a little obsessive. It's a little strange. I mean, the amount of Girls and Panzer merch that I own and will continue to buy is actually crazy. Why do I just autistically gravitate to this one series? There are reasons, and there's reasons people collect the way they collect. I would not judge anyone's collection, with one exception, which you guys already know, is when people get things and don't know what they're from. And I'm not talking a one-off. I understand you might like one specific thing and you're like, oh, you like it. Like, again, it's not a black and white thing. My initial video where I talked about that, people got very heated, which was understandable. But at the same time, I think that everyone should be allowed to collect how they want to collect. I do think that certain ways of collecting are more damaging to communities. A great example of that would actually be what's going on in the Pokemon sphere right now in regards to trading cards, because people are, it's mostly resellers, but what's happening in their collecting space is actually tragic, and I am so grateful that the Girls and Panzer collecting space is so kind, and also everything goes down after market for the most part, which makes me so much, oh my gosh, if it didn't, I would be, huh.
Yes, things like shopping addictions and hoarding exist and can be a problem for some people, but it's not my place to diagnose those things. It's not your place to diagnose those things. It's not Twitter's place, and it certainly is not TikTok's place. This is a discussion to be had between them and a professional.
Absolutely true. And I've talked about that before, that collecting can absolutely be an addiction. It can also be an escape from the real world. And escapes from the real world are absolutely fine as long as you're not relying on them to escape your life entirely. And that goes with any sort of addiction that you are jumping into to escape life to a detrimental degree, whether that be alcohol, whether that be video games, whether that be collecting plastic. If you are going into debt like a gambler in order to complete a set or expand your collection, keep up with whoever the neighbors, the Robinsons, right? Anyways, it's very much a keeping yourself in check, keeping yourself in line. But he's right. He's ultimately right. It's not our job to diagnose these people. It's not our job to say you're doing that wrong or assume that they have other issues when they may not.
But we shouldn't promote unhealthy behaviors, you say. And true, we shouldn't, especially if we have a platform. And that's something I want to touch on, but I also want to ask, when does it start being unhealthy? Because that's not something anyone can ever definitively answer. Where the line is, if there's a line at all, that's going to be different for each and every person. I think when it comes to collecting, there is a personal responsibility to try and promote healthy behaviors, especially when it comes to spending money, but that is not something anyone else can define for you, and not something you can define for anyone else.
Again, he's absolutely right, especially when you factor in that people make different amount of money. It's all very relative, and that's where it's difficult to be like, oh, they're purchasing healthily, or their purchases are unhealthy. Because someone, for instance, let's even just say that someone's loaded. Someone's got tons of money, and so they have a huge collection. But let's say that's huge collection is only like 0.5% of their income each year. Are they being unhealthy with their collection? Not financially, at least. You know what I'm saying? It's all very relative. It's all very specific and individualistic. And that's one of the best things about collecting is everyone collects in their own way. Everyone figures out how they can stretch their dollar, or whether or not the dollar even matters in some cases. It really, and that sometimes that depends on how much you're making, and sometimes that depends on what you're looking at buying. If it's something super rare and you're like, oh my God, I've waited years for this, you might be, you know, able to stretch your money or save up your money more so for that thing than otherwise. And now, are you an asshole because you spent an absurd amount of money on this one specific thing? If you could afford to buy it and put all this to it? What I'm saying is that there's a lot that goes into collecting, and collectors get it, but people who aren't into collecting do not get it. And it's really hard to explain to them why certain things are the way they are. I would never say that it's wasteful unless you're throwing things away. And personally, I'm someone who will repurpose figures that I don't like or fix them myself. So for me, it actually leads into other hobbies, personally. But again, personally, just like he's saying, personally. It's a very personal hobby.
The act of collecting in of itself is an extremely self-indulgent behavior. We are buying things that we, by every definition, do not need. No matter what you do, even if you try to operate as healthily and sustainably and environmentally friendly as you can possibly be, there's still going to be an element of materialism present. Unless you're collecting, like, dirt or sticks off the ground or something. And this is something I am admittedly guilty of too. I remember when the Stanley Cup craze was at its peak, and there were these TikToks of people with huge Stanley Cup collections, cabinets full of nothing but Stanley Cups. Stanley Cups for every day of the week, Stanley Cups to match your outfits, etc. And I would sit there and I would think, wow, this is so pointless. This is so wasteful. They're buying these just to put them on a shelf in their house? That's crazy. Yeah, it was a very humbling pot and kettle moment for me. Because literally, who am I to judge these people? If collecting cups is what makes them happy and has brought them joy, then, like, sure.
I will say that in regards to the Stanley Cup situation, I think the bigger issue is that it was a fad. It was a trend, it was a fad, and it was people just doing it to do it. Now, if people really like those cups and seriously use them for like ever, or just display them because they love the design for some weird reason, I don't really think they're that attractive, but maybe that's just me. That is then a collector if they are doing that, if they're displaying them for a purpose. And yeah, some of those overconsumption TikToks, however you want to label it, look really nice. Like, some of them are very well organized, more organized than my freaking Tupperware cabinet will ever be. But that being said, if they're just gonna throw them away, like I said before, then what was the point?
The fact is, I don't collect for the approval of other people. And neither should you, and neither should anyone. Collecting is a very personal thing, and that's okay.
And I couldn't have said it any better myself. Anyways, that is all of his video that I wanted to respond to. He goes on. If you want to see the rest of that, please go check his stuff out. I will go ahead and link it in the comments below. And please go ahead and continue this discussion. He has quite an interesting discussion, again, over in his comment section as well, but I'm curious what my people think over here. I hope you all have a fantastic day. If you enjoyed this video and you made it this far, please go ahead, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you have not already. I am a figure collector who collects whatever she wants. Generally, I collect Girls in Panzer. I consider this a Girls in Panzer channel, as that is what I mostly do. However, I also do whatever I want. If that sounds interesting to you, or if I seem interesting at all to you, please go ahead and join us in the future. We would love to have you. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and until next time, bye!